watching this after, my official live stream time on my YouTube channel is 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every single Saturday. So thank you everyone who's live for hanging out with me today. I'll show you what was in my thumbnail. I wanted it to be an interesting thumbnail because I have my white wall, which is really boring. So this is Our Lady of Guadalupe from the company I collabed with in my video that I shared, like a room tour. And then this is a crucifix that my fiance got me. It was like his first present he ever got me, so it's super sweet. So today's live stream topic is going to be about mental illness. My last video, I talked about 9 saints who had mental illness or who we can pray to if we have a mental illness. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about something a bit more controversial, but it is why, as far as I know, there are no canonized bipolar saints. This has really stunned me since becoming Catholic. I've been Catholic for 3 years now. The year before I became Catholic, I went to Mass every week and was like researching it and everything. So it's basically 4 years. And it's been so cool learning about the Fellowship of the Saints and how there's all these amazing people who have had such similar life experiences as we have. Obviously different because it was so long ago for a lot of them. But still, our spirituality and the emotions and relationships and our relationship with work, like everything is so similar in humanity. So it's been so cool getting to know all of the saints. But something that I've consistently seen is that there's not a bipolar saint. And a lot of people, when I was becoming Catholic, are like, Saint Dymphna, she's the saint of mental illness, who I talked about in my last video. And I was like, if she experienced depression, like major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, like that's zero understanding of what bipolar disorder is. Like even depression and bipolar disorder is different than depression and major depressive disorder. So I was really trying to find and research and like learn about more saints, like maybe someone we don't officially know they have it, but they did have it. So from what I've learned and researched, which has been a lot because I totally wanted to find one, is that there is not a canonized one. And I was talking to some of my friends about this recently, and we came up with some actual tangible reasons for why one wouldn't be canonized. And it'd be extremely unlikely for a bipolar saint to be canonized, especially before midway through the 20th century when we began medicating with psychiatric drugs. Before that, it was just so unlikely for one to be canonized, for someone to be canonized. So I do want to give a caveat. Absolutely, I believe there are bipolar people in heaven. Bipolar disorder, 1% of the population has it. So just like statistically, like it'd be really unlikely that there's no bipolar people in heaven. So obviously there's bipolar people in heaven. But when we're thinking about canonized saints, there's some reasons why they're not canonized. So I wrote a little video script for this video, so I'm going to be looking over here some. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is, one thing I wanted to say first. So a lot of people might say, oh, you can't diagnose people in history going back. So absolutely, like even professional psychiatrists, they are not allowed to, with their job description, go back, read about someone's story in history, read their journal entries, read people talk about their lives who knew them at the time. Like, it is unprofessional and you're not allowed to diagnose people in the past. That being said, it is pretty easy to diagnose people with mental illnesses, especially if they wrote an autobiography or journals, or they had a biographer, as so many major saints did. We can look back. A lot of saints who had scrupulosity, for example, is a symptom in OCD. So we can look back and be like, oh wow, they experienced this OCD symptom. Or if someone is in a depression episode, and in bipolar, it's not like situational depression, like it's a very physical depression where like you are not eating and losing weight, you can't get out of bed, you can't make major decisions, you can't make simple decisions about like what to eat, like it's completely debilitating and you cannot function. And so the fact that like a huge saint we know so much about, like we wouldn't know they were in a depression episode is just super unlikely. I think if there was a saint with bipolar 2, so bipolar 1 is manic and bipolar 2 is hypomanic, so like the prefix means less. So it's a more chill form of mania. I think if someone had hypomania, we wouldn't necessarily know that they had hypomania, but we would still know they had a depression episode. And then bipolar 1, which is what I have, very obviously, everyone would know something is totally off. So I want to give a couple examples historically of people we've known with bipolar. So number 1 is the founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, bipolar. I made a video about it, all the symptoms. Martin Luther King Jr. We can even look back to the founder of Protestantism, Martin Luther. He wasn't bipolar, but he had OCD, he had scrupulosity, he had social anxiety. You can look back historically, even hundreds and hundreds of years, and basically see what's going on at the time. So that is why I believe if a major saint did have bipolar, we would at least know they had depression. So the fact that there aren't major saints, it's just super unlikely that we wouldn't know unless it was like thousands of years ago. And even if we did, these are the reasons why we probably wouldn't consider them an official canonized saint. So the first one that I want to talk about, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about suicide for the next few minutes. So if you want to click off, set a timer for like 3 or 4 minutes and come back, or if you're watching this after, just skip ahead. So in Catholicism, suicide is grave matter, which means that in certain situations, it's a mortal sin, which means the word mortal, if you commit suicide, you don't have a chance to go to confession. So if you had full knowledge and full intent and you were in a solid state of mind where you can really think it through and you commit suicide, the church teaches that you could go to hell. So the reason I say grave matter and not mortal sin is because because something's on the grave matter list doesn't mean that everyone who does it, that is a mortal sin. You have to have certain qualifications. So bipolar people, half of bipolar people attempt suicide, 25% attempt suicide and actually kill themselves. So that's already like a fourth of bipolar people who the church is going to look at that, and it's a major red flag and such high grave matter in the situation. And then if it was a solid Christian who attempted suicide, I think just because they were in that state of mind, it would be something where the church wouldn't want to like highlight their life, if that makes sense. So it's a pretty new thing where we really understand psychiatric mental illness in the way we do today. We can do a lot of brain scans and that they weren't able to do earlier. I was just responding to a comment today on my video, someone saying like demon possession, bipolar demon possession, you need to pray it away, don't take medicine. There isn't a blood test for mental illness, therefore mental illness isn't real. And I literally commented on it that you can do brain scans and see what's happening in someone's brain. So even if someone has bipolar disorder and they're in a depression episode versus someone with major depressive disorder in a depression episode, you can see based on the brain scan if they have bipolar or MDD. So we have all of these ways of interpreting mental illness now. And so Catholicism has existed for 2,000 years. It's really only the past couple hundred years when we've had this really solid understanding of mental illness. Thank you so much for the donation, Vince. Hey, Lizzie, I'm just recovering from surgery. I didn't know. I had Tuesday for a defibrillator. Battery had changed. I have a question. Would you and Trevor start online? Start a YouTube channel online? What do you mean? Maybe. He's been in some of my videos before. So like one of the videos we want to make once we're married would be what it's like being married to a bipolar person and to share like the struggles and why some positives that come out of it, why it's really hard, how we cope with it. So I think that'll be like way more informative once we're married and are living together and have that whole deeper aspect of our relationship. So yes, that's the video I totally want to make. So the way mortal sin works, like what I was explaining earlier, is that if you don't have full intent that it is a sin, then it's likely not a mortal sin. Also, there's a caveat where you have to be in the right state of mind and have complete free will doing the action. So if someone who's bipolar is in a major depression episode, they have hallucinations and voices in their head telling them to kill themselves, hallucinations telling them how to kill themselves, they're not in a free will state of mind to mortal sin. Now, obviously, God decides all of this. It's not up to me to look at an individual situation and be like, that's a mortal sin, that's not a mortal sin. They had free will, they didn't. Obviously, this is just like my interpretation of it, and I'm never, ever, ever saying that I'm speaking for God, obviously. But these are just ways to understand sin that everyone can try and understand, so we can try to explain it with, like, obviously we're not omniscient, but the knowledge that we do have. So it wasn't until rather recently in the church when we can look at the suicidal situations and say that is likely not a mortal sin because they have bipolar disorder and we're in a major depression episode. So it wasn't until like a few hundred years ago when we first have this Catholic perspective on mental illness. And so previously, 1/4 of bipolar people who kill themselves, even if they were a saint and living out the gospel so much, maybe they were a missionary, a priest, a nun, the fact that they end their life by killing themselves automatically means that they're not going to be considered to be a canonized saint. And I think even someone who attempts suicide, the church might look at that and not canonize them. So obviously that doesn't mean they're not in heaven. It just means that they're not an official canonized saint. So the second thing that is kind of funny is, not funny, but I think it's a little bit funny to think about, is that I think a lot of bipolar people could have been heretics through the years because of their mania. So I just mentioned that Joseph Smith started Mormonism. So it's actually like extremely common in manic episodes to have this hyper religious essence going on and to want to start your own religion. It's like a manic symptom that so many people have. So Joseph Smith had a hallucination of an angel and all these things, but some bipolar people who want to start their own religion, they don't even have a hallucination, they just have this manic mindset of starting a religion. So Christianity through the years has had so many heretic groups, way before Protestantism happened. And so it totally makes sense to me that a bipolar person could have started one of the heretic groups. So I think bipolar people, it's like our minds are too creative in mania that it's really hard to just, exist within these rules of what you have to believe to be Catholic and what the church teaches. So there's this one really important heretic in the early church who I've talked about quite a bit because I have this thought that he's bipolar, and his name is Origen of Alexandria. So we historically owe so much to him when it comes to Catholic theology and biblical interpretation and everything. Like, he's genius. He's amazing. But his mind was too creative and he took it too far. He believed in this hyper universal salvation theology where he thought not only all people would be in heaven, but he even thought that Satan would be in heaven and that all the fallen angels, the demons, would also be in heaven. So I actually was really big into universal salvation when I was Protestant, and bipolar people have a huge empathy, and I think that could totally play into the understanding where you want, it makes sense to you from a God compassionate level that everyone would be in heaven. So Origen is one of the people, a few facts about his life, I was like, is he bipolar? And that's what I'm saying, even looking back 1,000+ years, there's some red flags where you can kind of identify it. One of the things is he wanted to die. He was so upset that he didn't die as a child, as a martyr. And it's kind of that amount of not caring about your safety and not caring about your life is super bipolar. So one example, one other thing I want to talk about is adultery. Adultery is also something that is grave matter that can easily become a mortal sin. So adultery is extremely common in bipolar. Bipolar has a 90% divorce rate if one of the spouses is bipolar, the couple 90% divorce rate. And there are so many reasons for that. I made an entire video in 2018 on the topic. But one of the things I shared in the video is that there's a hypersexuality in bipolar, specifically in manic episodes. And so it's really common for a bipolar person to go manic and then cheat on their spouse and go have sex with maybe one person, maybe a ton of people, Martin Luther King Jr., I just talked about how he was bipolar. He had like so many women he was having sex with. It was like absurd. Same thing with Joseph Smith. And it's just kind of like, when you see that kind of red flag behavior, it's just like, okay, maybe something else is going on. So it's like, when you start having sex with like a ton of people, it's kind of a red flag. So you could imagine in the Middle Ages, in the early church, that there's a bipolar Christian, and then they commit adultery on their spouse with multiple other people. That's like totally a red flag. And if someone had that situation in life, it's pretty likely that they wouldn't be considered to have a canonized saint based upon their life. And again, now that we understand bipolar, you know, there's so much grace, and well, God always gives us grace and mercy. But in the way we view that action, we understand, oh, cannot be a mortal sin, because they're not in the right frame of mind, and they do not have true free will in that moment that they committed the sin that was grave matter. So it can't be a mortal sin. But back in the day, for the majority of church history, they didn't understand bipolar and mania in the way we do today. So they wouldn't have had that perspective of like, oh, they're just in a manic episode. That's not their free will governing the situation. So someone says St. Augustine was a legit degenerate prior to conversion. Yeah, exactly. Augustine definitely didn't have bipolar. We have so many writings and historical facts about his life and everything. So he definitely doesn't seem bipolar. But yeah, you're right. There totally were people who had like one life stage of sin, and then they converted into Christianity. But bipolar is kind of different, where you'll randomly go into a manic episode. And so some people don't even have manic episodes until they're like 40 years old. Like, my bipolar came out in college very definitively. Like, my first hypomanic episode was my freshman year of college, because jet lag actually brings out, it's a trigger for bipolar episodes. So I went to high school in Florida, flew West Coast to California, so that's why I went into a hypomanic episode. And it was like depression, hypomania, depending on where I was traveling. So literally, without medication, like with medication, you can pretty much prevent depression and manic episodes and everything. But without medication, you'll randomly go manic. And so it's like, maybe you've been Christian your whole life, maybe you converted into Christianity at like 20 or 30, but after that point, without medication, you will still have your manic episode and could commit adultery on your spouse. So it's not like living one lifestyle, sexual sin, then a Christian obeying the law. It'll be like randomly you'll have those manic symptoms. So that's also something, like I said, suicide and adultery are both grave matter and can easily become a mortal sin. And if someone who's part of the church is doing that, you know, it's just unlikely that they'll get canonized. Obviously they could be in heaven, but they're not going to be like officially canonized in the eyes of the church. Okay. Another thing that, can you make this into a YouTube video? This is going to go live on my channel right after, so everyone will be able to rewatch it, but I can't make an entire video about it. The thing is, I have videos take so long to make with like editing and research and everything, and it's a lot easier to just like do it live in one take, post it on YouTube, rather than spend like 40 hours editing it. But maybe in the future I will make a whole video. So one other thing is being rejected from religious orders. So by this, I mean becoming a priest, monk, nun. So a lot of saints were in religious life, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. So obviously people who get married and don't go to a religious order obviously are in heaven. You do not have to become a nun, monk, priest to become a saint, obviously. But a lot of the canonized saints were in religious orders, and I think the intensity of spirituality in those situations where you're like solely focused on prayer, the Eucharist, worshiping God, all of that, that really pushes people towards sainthood. And just the intensity of that type of community, you also become more well known in that situation rather than just being like, you know, a person who's just living a secular life, married, all of these things. Obviously not secular in the way we understand it today, but not like a religious order. So in my video I posted on Wednesday about saints with mental illnesses, I gave 2 examples of 2 people who likely had mental illness who were consistently rejected from religious orders And looking back on those situations with like a modern understanding of mental illness, it's like, oh, that's why they kept getting rejected, you know? So one of the people I talked about was Saint Joseph Labre, and he got rejected like from over 5 different monasteries. And even one he went into, and then once he was there, they kicked him out. And when I was doing research for it, it specifically said because he got sick. And the New Advent did not clarify what that meant. So thinking back, you can kind of guess maybe he went into some kind of bipolar schizophrenic behavior going on. And it's actually funny because Saint Joseph Labre is a canonized saint. But I think he definitely didn't have bipolar disorder, because we would definitely know details of depression or manic episodes in his life, just because he had a biographer who was his priest writing all about his life. So it's like, it would be literally almost impossible to not know about depression, manic episodes in that situation. But he's someone who might have had some kind of mental illness that's kind of like unclear and difficult to diagnose. But like, facts about his life is he kept getting rejected from religious orders, and then he just decided to become homeless and lived on the street for like years, slept in the ruins of the Colosseum. So also, Saint Teresa of Lisieux's dad, Saint Louis Martin, also didn't have bipolar. He had some type of mental illness symptoms. It's kind of unclear what he had. But if someone does have depression episode, manic episode, like, you'll know it's like cyclical and back and forth. And so it's not just like he at the end of his life started having really weird symptoms. If he was bipolar, he would have started having like depression and manic episodes like in his teens or 20s. So bipolar is not like at the end of your life, you start having symptoms and everything. But St. Louis Martin, he was rejected from religious orders as well because he had some mental illness type behavior. So bipolar and schizophrenia are extremely devastating and traumatic mental illnesses. They have so many symptoms going on, and it's something to where you can imagine like hundreds of years ago when this is going on, people would be not understand it at all, not really have empathy for it because they don't understand where it's coming from. I mean, this even happens today. Like, when I interact with homeless people, a lot of people, you know, they're negative towards homeless people. They're like, oh, they're crazy. Like, what are they doing? And for me, like, I see what mental illness they have now with homeless people. Like, I can tell if they're manic. I can tell if they have schizophrenia just because of my knowledge and experience with mental illness. But like hundreds of years ago, when people start having this erratic behavior, they're not going to be like, oh, that person has this mental illness, like they're still close to God, like all of these things, you know what I mean? They're not going to identify them as someone who becomes like a canonized saint. So I'm sure there are lots of bipolar people in heaven, but thinking about all these things really put me at peace, because I was just like, why is there not a bipolar saint? And I didn't understand. And so now I understand. Let's see. Is the concept of sainthood biblically endorsed? If sainthood is biblical, then why aren't there saints in the Bible, or am I missing something? So the time of the Bible was before there were a lot of persecutions going on. And so it was like the first generation of Christians. So that wouldn't be in the Bible if they're praying to saints a lot. So you have to look the time outside of the Bible. This is the same thing I've said so many times for infant baptism. A lot of people are like, where is infant baptism in the Bible? And it's like, this is the first generation of Christians, so they're not like having babies and then baptizing the babies. In the time of the Bible, it was like a small portion of the first century. So with a lot of these things, we have to look beyond the Bible into Christianity, living out the faith. So one of the earliest writings is Saint Polycarp's martyrdom. He was taught by the Apostle John. Literally, Apostle John's disciple friend. John taught Polycarp all the faith, everything. So it's Jesus, Apostle John, Polycarp. So when Polycarp died, they rushed the Christians and they collected his bones. So that's a very early example of something that's not like in the Bible per se, but something that I share a lot. I think in so many of my videos, I really am like proving different Catholic theology in the Bible. And looking back, I understand where I was coming from those videos, and I'm sure they're helpful to a lot of people. But I think it gave the impression that Catholicism needs to be, every part of Catholic theology needs to be in the Bible, and it really doesn't. They were living in an oral culture in the time, and so their theology was not like written down word for word the way it is today in the catechism and canon law. It was an oral culture, and so there were a lot of teachings that were not written down. The Bible was writings inspired by God that were read at Mass. And so obviously God was working through scripture, and there's so much theology and depth, and our faith is displayed so well in the Bible, but that was not the catechism of the church. It was not canon law of the church. It was an oral culture. And so when we say as Catholics that we go by tradition, we're talking about the oral tradition that the apostles taught, that Jesus taught. These things that are not explicitly in the Bible. And the majority, so much of Catholic tradition is the ways that we interpret the Bible. So I think that answers your question. The main thing is that it's the first generation of Christians. And so we're not going to be seeing a lot of praying to saints and relics and all these things in the Bible. Same with infant baptism. Okay. Chaya says, sola scriptura makes no sense from either a Jewish or Christian perspective. Yes, Catholicism and Judaism have so much overlap because Catholicism came from Judaism. Jacob says, scripture does make mention of entire households being baptized, which would presumably include babies. Yes, there are two Bible passages in the New Testament in the book of Acts where it says this person and their entire household was baptized. And so something I recently thought about, I think someone might have said in the live stream, but at that time in the first century, it wasn't just like the mom, dad, and the kids. It was like the grandfather, the 5 sons, the 5 sons' wives, their children. They didn't have birth control, or they did have birth control and contraception at that time. They had different methods of it, but it wasn't at all like we have today. And so people would have a lot of kids. And so it's very unlikely that the household, the whole household that was baptized, it's not like, you know, they had 3 kids, maybe they were all teenagers, they were not infants, you know what I mean? Like, it was so many people, and so it's extremely unlikely that in those households, there were not babies and toddlers. So that's a really good catechesis tip with that one. People are saying they'll pray to people when they die. 5 Kai Dragon, I wish there was a patron saint of food allergies. I'll just have to do it myself. Yeah, so a lot of allergies, we have way more food allergies in the Western world than non-Western countries. And so that makes us believe and guess. A lot of scientists and medical professionals have said that it might have to do with our diet, because the standard American diet in Western world, it's very different than the way people eat in Asia and South America, Africa. You know, we have so many different diets, and so it's really clear that like the Western diet is causing all these food allergies. And obviously a lot of things are genetic as well, but that could be one contributor. And because Catholicism has been 2,000 years, food allergies are more of like a more recent thing. So it's kind of a little bit similar to the Bipolar, where like we now understand mental illness. But Liz says, since we've only recently learned about autism and ADHD, I wonder how long until we canonize a neurodivergent saint. So actually, by video I just posted on Wednesday about saints with mental illness, I didn't want to put it in the video because I don't like making claims that cannot be proven. But a few of the saints, actually, people were writing about may have had autism. So I think it's the same thing where there totally must have been saints with autism who may not be canonized yet, but there definitely are people in heaven with it, because that has a genetic basis as well. No one says, who would like to see Lizzie wear a mustache? There's a lot of iPhone apps where you can see what you look like in a different age, your gender, and everything. So I'm sure one that is that. Okay. Janka says, the Coptic Church today celebrated the Assumption of Mary. Yes, the Orthodox holidays are very close to when the Catholic ones are. A lot of times they're not the same day, but they'll be like the next week or something, so. Five Kai Dragon says, the food quality across the world is so interesting. Food allergies are non-existent in Eastern society, but they are growing in Western society. And I think it's largely due to food quality. Yeah, I mean, you guys know my perspective on it, where I'm vegan, and a lot of Western cultures eat a lot more meat and especially a lot more dairy, whereas dairy is very non-existent in a lot of non-Western cultures. Not non-existent, but like barely ever consumed in a lot of non-Western countries. And it makes sense to me that if these Western foods of a lot of animal products can lead to so many other diseases and types of cancer and everything, it makes sense that they could also lead to food allergies. Danielle, what is your view on receiving the Eucharist on the hand versus the tongue? Would you make a video about it? I could make a video about it. I mean, what the video would be is that it's fine either way, and historically we have received on the hand and on the tongue. A lot of people on Twitter like go after me about this because I made statements saying that like Chris Stubb, for example, who lived in the early church, he, in his writings, talks about how when we receive the Eucharist, we make a throne for Jesus on our hands. So this is going all the way back to the early church. So people get really mad at me when I talk about that. There are a lot of people who say that Vatican II brought back on the hands, but they fail to realize that this was original, and going back to their early Christianity, there were so many Christians who did receive on the hand. So my thing is that I'm upset when people try to make a claim that it's not okay when the church authority allows it. Like, sure, there could be a priest who is doing something horrible at Mass that goes against the rules of Mass liturgy. There could be a priest who, in homily, says something that is against Catholicism. Like, these things are possible and can happen. But it's not like, oh, this priest is allowing receiving on the hand, that because it's the priest, that doesn't mean it's true. But like the church authority, you know, like the very top, they're saying it's okay to receive on the hand. So basically, I mostly receive on the tongue, and it depends on what type of Mass I'm at. So for example, like during COVID right now, if you do receive on the tongue, the priest has to like go over to the hand sanitizer station and wash his hands, and then you receive on your tongue, and then he washes his hands again, and then the next person receives. And my modus operandi at Mass is to blend in. And some people got mad at me about that because they're like, well, I like to raise my hands during part of the Mass. I'm like, I like doing this. Like, it's me and Jesus in the moment. But like, Mass isn't like that for me. Mass is about the community. Christianity was born in a non-Western culture. We're an individualistic culture. And so we need to change to understand Catholicism. So like at Mass, I really like how we all put our hands out at the same time to say, peace be with you. Or like, we kneel at the same time. Whereas in like a Protestant evangelical church, people are like on their own raising their hands during worship. So all this to say, I like blending in at Mass and not making a big deal about like the priest having to use the hand sanitizer station and everything. So like, especially during the pandemic, I've received on the hand, even if it is an option to receive on the tongue. Definitely, if you're in a situation where it's a more traditional church and they have altar rails and everyone's going in a line and kneeling together and receiving on the tongue, it's really weird to me if one person wants to receive on their hand. Like, obviously it's okay, the church allows it, it's licit and everything, but licit is licit, not illicit. I probably shouldn't say it that way. So it's fine, it's according to church authority, it's a great way to receive the Eucharist, it's fine. But if I'm in a situation where like everyone is receiving on the tongue, I think it's weird to not. And I saw one situation at a Mass where everyone was on the altar rail, so you walk up in two lines, They have altar rails with cushion kneelers on them, and there's like 10 people who fit on each altar rail. So I saw 2 people go up and not kneel, stand up, and then put out their hands for the Eucharist when everyone else was kneeling on the altar rail and receiving on the tongue. So to me, I would never do that. I want to blend in. So an example of me blending in, so at a lot of churches in California, when the priest says, peace be with you, we say, and with your spirit, with my hands out. So if I'm in a parish where no one is doing that, I won't do it. Just because I don't want to distract anyone and I want to blend in. So all that to say, I really feel the vibe of the church. If it's fine to receive in your tongue, I will. If you're the only person because of COVID and they have to go to the hand sanitizer station, I don't like that. If you really care about receiving on the tongue during COVID, go to an Eastern Catholic church. Lau, thank you so much for the donation. I contacted Keith Nestor about you, Lizzie, just wondering if you have caught up with him. His story reminds me of yours. Oh, yeah. There were so many things similar. I watched a lot of the lectures and stuff he gave. It was so cool because Steve Ray, he literally like went to his talk, and Steve Ray's books really helped me in my conversion. So yeah, it's really cool, the similarities. 5 Kai Dragon says, I have no choice but to stand out because I'm the only one who receives the blood. I often get questions about it, but I don't mind anymore. Is it because you're allergic to gluten? See, that's a great example of not standing out. So one parish I go to sometimes, there's this woman who is gluten, like she can't have a lot of gluten, so she receives the low gluten Eucharist, and she goes at the very end, and then the priest gets the low gluten Jesus for her. And so that's a very respectful thing to do, where you're not like pausing the entire communion line for 2 minutes for the priest to walk up and get the gluten-free host. So love blending in at mass and not distracting people. Okay. A 5 Guy Dragon, I usually go first. I would go last. And Caitlin says, I usually receive on the tongue, but depending on the parish, I will receive on the hand if there are more COVID restrictions. Yeah. And like personally, I would really like if every Catholic church had altar rails and the kneelers at the altar rail and everyone kneel together and receive on the tongue together. Like, I think that's really ideal. And I think it's really special being at churches like that, because you just feel more communal and you feel connected to everyone. Obviously, we're objectively, physically connected to everyone when we all receive the Eucharist, but there's something about everyone kneeling together that makes it really, really special. And so I think the problem where we're having this collision in the church, where there are some more conservative Catholics who are like, everyone needs to kneel, everyone needs to receive on the hand. Like, the fact that most Catholic churches, you're going up in a line one by one, it honestly just doesn't work for one person to kneel and everyone else to stand. So I think we should just go back to having altar rails and everyone goes on the altar rail, everyone receives on the tongue. Like, I would prefer that. But since we're doing this like individual 2-line situation, yeah, it just doesn't work. Michael says, what about judging people for whatever reason they can't kneel and stand at mass all the time? I've seen some Catholic kids. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, and especially people who are more elderly, sometimes they won't kneel down all the way. They'll like go on the pew like that and kind of lean forward and their hands will be on the kneeler. And since a lot of elderly people do that, I've kind of like made the connection I did 3 years ago when I became Catholic, that people for different medical reasons or how their bones are and what some condition, you know, they can't kneel. And so since I made that connection, I'm like, oh, other people might also have a medical issue where they don't kneel. I actually have a problem too. I've been working on it a lot. Like, I changed the supplements I take and everything. So like 2 years ago, I would get dizzy so much. And maybe it wasn't even supplements, because I've had several supplements in the past year, but I was deficient in something that I wasn't eating. And so, or maybe I wasn't eating enough food, maybe it was my medication I was on, but something, I would get so dizzy. And so during Mass, when everyone is standing, I would have to sit down. And when everyone's kneeling, I would have to like sit on the pew like this because I was gonna pass out. So I hope people realize that in situations like that, people have a medical condition. But yeah, it was so bad. Like I would almost pass out at Mass all the time. I think it honestly might have been one of my medications. I don't know what it was, but now it's gone. So either like I eat more food or my supplements have more, I don't know. Yeah, I highly recommend everyone to take a multivitamin. I know a lot of vegans take a multivitamin just because we need a B12 supplement, but oh, I was not taking any supplements then. Maybe that was the problem. So now that I take supplements, I feel a lot better. Five Kai Dragon says, I've been told by trads, so if anyone's here and doesn't know that term, that refers to Catholics who specifically seek out going to Latin Mass. And that's just a term that was created. I've heard some people are offended by it, but most people I know who go to Latin Mass like the term. And then they say rad trads is the people on Twitter, the Latin Mass attending people on Twitter who are super mean and unchristlike and go after normal Orthodox Catholics. Okay, and when I say Orthodox, I mean lowercase o, which just means like going by the church teachings. Okay. Five Kai Dragon, I've been told by trads I shouldn't receive the blood when no one else can, but they don't realize why I do. They say receive the gluten-free toast. I can't because I'm allergic to wheat, not gluten. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why people are that ignorant about food allergies. I feel like if someone explained it to me like that, I would be like, oh, wheat allergy. So yeah, it's like required that it has that in it. So yeah, I actually know people who are allergic to gluten, like they can't receive Jesus in the appearance of the bread, and they also can't receive Jesus in the wine, so they can never receive the Eucharist, which is super sad. Okay. Cat lady, can we wear rosaries? Yeah! So like in California, a lot of people at my parish wear their rosaries, so other people get super offended by it. So, I mean, I'm wearing this because I have started this thing at Mass where like I hold my rosary during the entirety of Mass just because I feel like it's so special, just like having my mini crucifix with Jesus there. So I was holding my Mass during Mass, and then I had to go and receive the Eucharist on my hand because like I explained, it's COVID. So then I put it over me and then I just wore it for the rest of the day. So Caitlin says, I love Latin Mass and I've been going a lot this year, but I'm obviously not against Novus Ordo, so I call myself a normie trad. That's really cute. Five Kai Dragon says, the rosary helps me feel at peace. I just got one for my car because driving makes me nervous. Yes, and we should actually pray before you drive. Every time before you drive, pray. I was hanging out with a Dominican priest once, and he got into like the community car. We were going somewhere, and he said a prayer before driving. And I was like, why doesn't everyone do this? Because people pray before going on a plane. We all cross ourselves and say a prayer when the plane is taking off. But like, you're more likely to get in a car accident than a plane accident. Like you're way more likely to die in a car than a plane. So if we're praying on the plane, why aren't we praying for the car? So I don't drive, but if I ever get a car, I'll pray before we leave and then pray when you get to where you're going as a thank you prayer to God. So, and a rosary should totally remind you to pray. I love it when Uber drivers have their rosary because I'm always like, oh my goodness, I'm Catholic too. And then we talk about our Catholicism. It's super sweet. Chaya says, I don't drive either. No one ever noticed Roman Catholics do the cross backwards. Do you mean cross? Oh, I can't do it. Cross themselves like that, like the Eastern way, or like wear the cross backwards? Cat Lady says, why do other Catholics hate people wearing rosaries? I don't know. People think it's sacrilegious or something. I don't really know. Oh, I guess because they think you're like wearing it as jewelry, but I want to show you something, guys. So the company I consistently collab with, they actually make rosary bracelets. I have a lot more of these, and it's like a bracelet with a, sorry, it's backwards, with a medal on it. This is Saint Teresa of Lisieux, and they have other rosary bracelets where they have like 10 beads to pray 1 decade of a rosary as a bracelet. So it's very interesting to me that some people view Catholic stuff as jewelry and other people don't. The reason I think no one should get mad about wearing a rosary is because we wear crucifix necklaces and we wear miraculous metal necklaces. So literally, what's the difference? Like, metal, crucifix, and just the beads are offensive. Like, the rosary prayer beads are offensive. So yeah, just the fact that we wear crucifix necklaces and saint medals, there's no difference. But if you guys disagree, let us know. Okay. Liz says, oh, I love that. Bet my mom would too, thinking about Christmas already. It is so easy to get Catholics presents. There's so many church things that you can get them. Joshua says, the last time I took a flight was from Cincinnati, well, technically Hebron, Kentucky, to Tampa in 2019. Michael, I always look for a rosary in the car too. This one Uber driver I had, he had like a rosary, like another saint thing, and then he was wearing a rosary, and it was so much Catholic stuff. I think he had a crucifix on the window too. Tom Assern says, with all respect, I will ask you some questions. Christ came 2,000 years ago. Does your church have 2,000 years old? Is it of Christ or from the name and surname of your pastor? Oh, I thought it was a Protestant at first. I was going to be like, yeah, our church is 2,000 years old. Like, the Catholic and Orthodox and Oriental Orthodox churches are the only ones that can be traced back 2,000 years. Oh, okay, I wanted to shout out my TikTok. So I have a TikTok. I've been posting Catholic videos on it. My TikTok is the same as my YouTube name, just Lizzie's Answers. I had no idea how easy it was to get views on TikTok. I thought it would be like so difficult, but I guess the YouTube algorithm is the one people always complain about. They don't complain about the algorithms on other social media sites. So yeah, I have so many more videos I'm gonna make. I have like a whole Google Doc of all my videos and plans and everything. So, oh, it's really funny because there are so many Protestants in the comment section. And I know in live streams sometimes there's Protestants. There's, from the live stream comments I read, it seems like there's more atheists going after Catholicism than Protestants. But on TikTok, so many Protestants. And it's hilarious. It's like the Protestants and then my Catholic followers are like going after each other. They're like comment. And I was thinking like, this is fantastic because I don't know if this is how the TikTok algorithm works, but on every other social media, if you have more comments, it increases your place in the algorithm. So I was like, oh, the people going back and forth, Protestant, Catholic, Protestant, Catholic, Protestant, Catholic, like that's increasing my view count. So I was really excited about that. And it's actually really cool because I feel like on my YouTube now, even though I've had YouTube for 11 years and have had a lot of different followers through the years, I feel like a lot of Protestants have just stopped watching my channel. And so I really don't get to interact one-on-one with Protestants, but on TikTok, they are like fiery and they're very passionate about their convictions and everything. So, oh, my water's down here. I have 2 waters. Joshua says I don't use TikTok. I don't either. I always thought it was something for the younger generation, so I never got it. But I was thinking the other day, I am 2 years away from being Gen Z. I'm a millennial, but I was born in 94, and Gen Z is born in 97 or early or later. So I was like, I'm basically Gen Z, so I should get with it. Okay. That's also the hair scrunchies, because I recently got obsessed with them like in January. And I was thinking like, oh, this is what like Gen Z does. And I was like, oh, I'm almost Gen Z, so it's fine if I do it too. Liz says on TikTok, they're totally fearless. People will comment anything. Well, I like it way more than Twitter, because on Twitter, it is these Catholics going after me, and it's so obnoxious. Like, you'd think that you'd be able to display love towards your fellow Catholics. Like, it's fine if there's, like, Protestants or atheists who are attacking you, like, that's fine. But the fact that other Christians are doing it, Catholic Christians, is just very shocking to me, so. Yeah, the Catholics are very sweet on there. In the longer, sorry, I can't pronounce your name. TikTok isn't exactly age-defined, but generally most of its users are. Heck, I am Gen Z and I don't use TikTok. Yeah, I mean, it might be one of those things where it takes a while to gain everyone getting on there, so maybe you will in a few years. Five Kai Dragon, where can we buy rosary bracelets? So this is not sponsored right now, but they have sponsored me before. There is a company named Christian Catholic Shop, and you should be able to use my discount code Lizzie20. I assume it's still live, but we'll see. Liz says Twitter is the platform where it's incredibly easy to be radicalized no matter what you believe. It's pretty alarming. Yeah, so the reason that I thought Twitter was so bad is because people hide behind their account name. So they'll have a picture and a name that's not their real picture, not their real name. Whereas Instagram and Facebook, people in your life, like your family and friends, are on your Facebook and on your Instagram. So if someone says something, then their friends and family are going to be like, wow, that's awful. I can't believe you said that. Don't talk like that to people. Whereas Twitter, you have no idea who the person is. And a lot of times they're friends and family, they're not following them there. And so that's why it's so chaotic. And I don't know, maybe on TikTok, people's friends and family are there? I'm not sure, but. Sorry, guys. I think okay, yeah. Cool, now it can't fall. My ring light, there's a lot of different like contraptions on it, so you have to like, I don't know how to explain it, but there's like handles and stuff, and so if it's not all the way, then stuff can fall down and stuff. So it's basically like a tripod. Okay. Caitlin says, I always have to take breaks from TikTok because it's so addicting. You could easily stay up until 3 a.m. watching it. Yeah, I'm not letting myself watch on it because when I got it a couple months ago, I was like, oh my goodness, you can spend so much time on this. So I only follow a few people and I'm never gonna watch them. So I don't want to get addicted. I can't afford it with my schedule. Liz says, I've been loving buying from monasteries plus abbeys. Let me get the name of the Dominican nuns that make soap and lotions. They're lovely. Yes, support your local stores. There's so many local Catholic stores, and you could also go to local Orthodox stores because they have a lot of legit icons as well. And so always just Google your city name and Catholic shop, and a lot of times a Catholic shop will come up. So I totally think it's really important to support local businesses. Obviously, online businesses are great too, besides Amazon. It's so bad. Like, I want to quit Amazon, but it's so hard because everything is so easily accessible. Heather says, does anyone notice many Catholics today in the U.S. are behaving like Protestants with the, quote, occasion of sin perspective? It's Calvinist-esque. European Catholics aren't like that, even trads. Are you talking about in confession when we talk about avoiding the near occasion of sin? I feel like, wait a second, I need to get the word for word. I should have this memorized. I go to confession like every month, but I don't. I should start saying it every day. That's how I got the Hail Holy Queen and St. Michael prayer memorized. I just said it every day for 2 weeks and then I had it down, even if I didn't say it every day. Okay, where is the act of contrition? There's like a new one that like changes the language. They shouldn't change the language. I understand not saying like thy and stuff. Yeah, so the act of contrition, I firmly intend with your help to do penance, to sin no more, and to avoid the near occasion of sin. So it's literally in our prayer in the confessional. So I don't know if that has overlap with Calvinism, but it seems like if it's coming from that, it can't be wrong. Okay. Liz, now we're hooked on that dang Prime. I know! Oh, I have a P.O. box to order a lot of stuff at, and I don't go there every day, and sometimes I just like send it to my apartment because I'm like, I want it tomorrow instead of waiting a couple days. Okay. Joshua says confession is required bare minimum once per year, but I tend to go at least once per month. Yeah, I go like every 3 to 6 weeks. I had the opportunity to go to confession today because I was at the church for mass way early, but I was like, I don't have anything to confess. So, okay. Caitlin, Catholic, thank you for explaining. Heather says, no, in general life, outside confession, almost like scrupulosity, it's mostly in America due to culture. Yeah, I haven't really seen that a lot. Teresa says, if you didn't choose Irenaeus as your confirmation saint, who would be your second choice? Probably St. Paul in the Bible, one of the apostles. Okay. 5 Kai Dragon says, I haven't been able to go to confession for a few months because I've been in and out of town and my parish only offers it once a week. I know! Okay, I just turned the Wi-Fi off of my phone, so I hope I'm back. I think it just says could not connect and then it reconnected, so. Okay, cool. There's like a time stamp on the live stream and it pauses when I'm not there, so it's moving right now, so that must mean that we're back. Okay, I think, what comment was I responding to? Oh, confession. Yes, there are like no confession times. I have seen a lot of churches on the East Coast that have confession like every day and stuff. So they definitely should have more confession. But the problem is that we have priest shortages. So that's a huge issue where the priests like don't have enough time and everything. Alenzer says, why are Catholic masses in Latin and not in the language Jesus spoke, Aramaic that is? Just because of the history of the way Mass evolved and where the majority of Catholics were and everything like that. So you'll find a lot of Oriental Orthodox churches who had Mass not in Latin based upon where they lived. So obviously after Vatican II, which was a council in the middle of last century, now Mass around the world, the majority is in the vernacular language that everyone speaks, which I think is a really positive thing. I definitely enjoy going to Latin Mass, but I definitely prefer Novus Ordo, which is the language, the vernacular language, just because I really appreciate everything that's going on. And I totally get that during Mass, it's a beautiful thing if it's very like meditative and you're like praying for everyone in your life and all that, which I do at Latin Mass. But I personally really enjoy being like focused on the whole liturgy and like thinking of every part of it. I cry like every time because the liturgy is so beautiful. So a lot of people at Latin Mass, they bring the, why can I not think of the name? They bring the books that are, anyways, comment what I'm talking about. But missals. They bring the missal that has the scripture readings for the whole year, and they have the Latin, English side by side for every part of the Mass. So that's really cool because they can follow along. And obviously if you go every week, you'll learn a lot of Latin. But personally, even if I learned it, I still wouldn't want to go every week. So that's just my perspective. I love Novus Ordo. I'm glad Vatican II happened. Caitlin says, my favorite thing about Latin Mass is the chant music. It depends on the Latin Mass you go to, though. A lot of them have choirs and stuff, so it depends. Joshua says, the Maronite Church, which is an Eastern Catholic church, has divine liturgy in Aramaic, Arabic, and the vernacular language. There's a Maronite church within driving distance. That's so cool. Maronite is so beautiful. Actually, when I was thinking of becoming Catholic back in like 2017, I went to a Greek Orthodox church in Seattle. And then I was like, I want to go to a Latin mass church to have church in Latin. And then I started going every week. I just wanted like the one experience, but I really vibed with it. Okay, Caitlin says I'm also taking Latin class this semester, so I think going to Latin mass will help me. Yeah, that's so sweet. Latin will help you learn so many other languages too, if you want to, so it's such a great thing. Okay. SMZ, the Novus Ordo, and Latin Mass are both beautiful in their own ways, but it is a matter of preference. What's important is that we came to see Jesus and be with him regardless of the form of Mass. Yes. Okay. Chaya, was the Greek modern Greek or Koine biblical Greek? Neither. Oh. Yeah, neither. For a second, I got confused because you wrote like Koine/biblical, and I was like, wait, is she asking between the three? I was confused, but yeah. Thomasin, you were just avoiding the answer that's that's so mean. Okay. Okay, now we're talking about modesty. Interesting. Yeah, on TikTok, I'm really focusing on modesty because it's a different angle than YouTube. Like YouTube is like this, whereas TikTok is like this, so it shows like your hips and your legs and everything. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna wear like skirts and like loose shorts always on this app. Liz said, I love the TikToks about modest fashion. They are so fun. Yeah, I guess you could see it because of the angle. Yeah, I've never had issues with people talking about my dress on YouTube because it's just here and like I never show my chest ever in my life. So everyone was so confused when people on social media when I became Catholic were like, Liz dress is so immodest and everything. So yeah, TikTok is different though. Okay. Thomasin says, Lizzie, apologetics is more direct answers. I don't have so much pedagogy. Caitlin says, I almost took Koine Greek, and I think it would be so cool to learn, but I think Latin will be more practical since I'm studying historical theology instead of biblical. Patrick says, when will your video about the process of canonization of saints be coming? Probably in September or October. It's gonna take me a bit to research it, but it is on my list of the videos I'm going to make. And my fiance, he's a PhD theology student. He didn't even know that I was planning the video, and he mentioned something about it, and I was like, cool. So he recommended a book that I will include in it. What? No one? That doesn't even deserve to be read out loud. Okay. Tobism, I should give you a Spanish text when you use Google Translate. Are you talking about in the chat right now? Okay, you guys are talking about God's existence or something? I don't know what you guys are talking about. Anyways, I'll share the videos on my 2 film list. Obviously not 2 film. I still have to research and write video scripts and everything. But let's see. So I did my video, Saints to Pray to for Mental Illness. Another video, Catholicism and Drinking Alcohol. Another video, Why Meat is the #1 cause of global warming. Really important video. 4 popular bipolar figures, so just like historically and in religion and stuff. 5 saints who had scrupulosity, which is kind of going along with my saints to pray to with mental illness. So I'd specifically talk about scrupulosity. That's an OCD symptom that, because it's so related to religion, it's really, really easy to pinpoint. And a lot of people deal with that. It sounds awful, when I hear about it, I'm like, I'm so happy I have bipolar and not OCD. That sounds horrible. And like the way bipolar plays into Catholicism is like when you're manic, you have this like hyper religiosity, hyper spirituality is the official term, where you just want to like read your Bible and pray for hours and hours. And then in depression, you don't want God to exist, or don't believe God exists, don't feel God's presence. But ever since becoming Catholic, I'm like, oh, I can physically receive Jesus in the Eucharist, so I'm close to God still, and I can look up at a crucifix at Mass and like in my house and stuff, and remember that when Jesus was on the cross, he also felt separated from God. So like he experienced what I experienced in depression. So like once I became Catholic, it solved all of my religious issues in my depressive episodes of bipolar. And then manic episodes for religion makes me even more excited about Catholicism. So now my bipolar has zero negative effect on my Catholicism and relationship with God, which is the same thing. So yeah, it just sounds horrible that it's this mental illness symptom that's like attacking their faith. That's horrible. And obviously now we have medication that can treat OCD, and one of the saints I'm going to be talking about was on medication for OCD. So I hope it encourages people to go on medication. I think the problem is that if the main way their OCD manifests is the scrupulosity. Okay, if you don't know what this is, guys, scrupulosity is like an intense fixation on sin, where you believe that things that are not sins are sin, and you feel like you're not worthy to receive the Eucharist all the time. And even when you go to confession, you still feel guilty after confession because you're like, what if I didn't confess everything? Which is a wrong perspective to have. It's not even true. Because if you forget to confess something in confession, it is still forgiven. As long as you were as vulnerable and honest about everything you believe you did. If you accidentally missed something, it's still forgiven. But they don't feel like they're forgiven. And so I think if that's the main OCD symptom, they won't connect it to mental illness necessarily. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's like a religious issue, I need to work out with my faith. And it's like, yes, pray about it, but like go on medication. So super important. Liz says, I definitely deal with symptoms of scrupulosity. For me, it's like you liked a TikTok where someone said the OM phrase, so unlike it now where you are damned. Like, oh my goodness, you saying a curse. I guess that's not necessarily a curse word. Sorry, guys. Can I chill? Yeah, for me, anytime someone uses God's name in vain, I always cross myself. If it's like in a song, movie, TV show, YouTube video, anything like that. And I've actually been considering to not listen to music that uses God's name in vain. So it's hard because a lot of songs I really like do. And so I don't know. I wonder how God feels about it. And I wonder how saints through the years would feel about it. Because our culture constantly uses God's name in vain. And we don't realize how bad it is. Like, for me, I grew up Christian. And I grew up in like a Christian city, like pretty much everyone was religious where I grew up. And so I didn't hear God's name used in vain, like barely ever. And I listened to like not much secular music growing up. So it really shocked me as I got older and I became friends with people who use God's name in vain. And like one of my friends stopped doing it around me. She's Protestant, but she uses God's name in vain a lot, and she like stopped because she realized how much it hurt me. And I think a lot of people, like especially people who did not grow up religious and then convert into Christianity, into Protestantism or Catholicism, it's super hard for them to get out of the habit. And so when I hear it, I'm like super hurt. I cross myself. If I'm with a friend, I thought I would start doing where I cross myself if someone uses God's name in vain, but I'm like, no, people will interpret it as really passive aggressive. So I just like pray in my head. But yeah, I think even me who feels really hurt by it, I think I don't even realize how bad it is. And I think if we went back, like if someone from the Middle Ages or the early church came back today, they would be like shocked how common it is. So I'm trying to think from their perspective. I'm like, wouldn't they hate this song that uses God's name in vain So, yeah, and what I really wish is that the clean version of songs got rid of using God's name in vain. They need to create like an ultra clean, like Christian clean version of songs. Because you can get rid of curse words, but like the F word is so much better than using God's name in vain. So. Oh, some of my other future videos that I'm working on. So, the saint making process. And then top pure Netflix shows to watch. I have some ideas. The Galileo controversy. And then saints to pray to for deaths of loved ones, because some of the saints in my mental illness saints video I uploaded on Wednesday, in that video, there were some saints who I was researching, and other parts of their life they experienced people, family members die, and friends and stuff. And so I thought that would be a whole video on that. And I'm definitely going to make future videos where I'm like 10 saints for this, 7 saints for this, 9 saints for this, for different topics. So you guys can become more familiar with Christians in heaven, and then you can research into their lives more and pray to them and everything. So yeah, and I'm so excited because I feel like people who are cradle Catholics, like they tell me sometimes, and they tell Catholic converts like, oh, Catholic converts, they know so much because they had to research in and they went through RCIA and like they know so much. But when it comes to like info about the saints through the years, cradle Catholics know so much and they don't even realize how much they know. So I was really excited researching for this and learning about the lives of people I really didn't know that much about. Catherine of Siena really confused me. Like, she had such a dramatic life. I was shocked. And there were so many like little details, and I was like, so yeah, a very intense person, very influential person. Oh, I haven't written this down. I'm going to talk about top female saints, because a lot of people view the Catholic Church as very sexist and even misogynistic for a lot of reasons, but mainly because women cannot be priests and because the church is against use of contraception. So people think like that's forcing women to just be pregnant all the time. And then there's some like more conservative, I was about to say weird, and I'm like, no, that's offensive. There are other more like conservative Catholics who think women should just like be a stay-at-home mom and they shouldn't have a career. So anyways, there are reasons that people think Catholicism is sexist. And so I think it will be important to highlight major female saints who were super influential in Catholic history. And Catherine of Siena is one of them. She was super powerful politically. She had tons of male and female disciples who she ministered to and stuff. So yeah, I'll talk about her, some of the other doctors of the church, all of that. Okay. And then people who don't like Catholicism will be like, oh, there's a lot of women saints. And of course, I have to talk about Mary in it. It was pretty funny. One of my friends, she is from Brazil, she was like, I've never understood people who think Catholicism is sexist. Like, Mary has the hugest place in the church ever. Second to Jesus, of course. Oh my goodness, guys, I had a thought today. I have like random thoughts about things about Jesus that like no one is talking about. I mean, I think other people are, but they're just not vocalizing it. And I'm like, what about this? What about this? Like, for example, I was thinking last week, I was wondering what if Mary and Joseph like lived in the same household with their cousins and everything, like I was talking about earlier, like the way they lived in the 1st century. And then I was like, did Joseph ever get like in fights with them? Because obviously like Jesus and Mary never sinned. So I was like, do they have any sort of chaos in their family dynamic? And then I was like, what did Mary and Jesus talk about all the time? So then I was thinking, did Jesus have a guardian angel? Because every person has a guardian angel. And so I was thinking like, okay, Jesus probably had a guardian angel, right? Because everyone does. So, but then I was like, did he have it before he was born into the world? Like, when he was just existing in heaven as like the son part of the Trinity and like not Jesus of Nazareth? Did he have a guardian angel? And then I'm like, would the Holy Spirit have a guardian angel? That doesn't make sense. So I was thinking what I think I could be wrong. Let me know if there's any people who've ever talked about this. I feel like it's so inconsequential, but to me, it's really interesting. So I think that when Jesus was, the zygote of Jesus was created, because obviously in Catholicism, we believe people have souls the moment of conception. So not when they're born, but they have their soul moment of conception. So I also assume that they have their guardian angel the moment of conception. Like, that makes sense to me, because like they gain personhood at the moment of conception. So I think that the guardian angel, obviously angels, yeah, I don't know that much about angels. I wanted to make a video on it, and I was like researching, and I was like, there's so many angels in the Bible, like so many. How do you even begin talking about the topic? So I should just read some books on theology of angels. Okay. Teresa says, did your church growing up discourage reading the Bible on your own so you didn't risk finding Catholic verses, e.g. John 6 verses on tradition? Absolutely not. It was totally encouraged to read our Bible all the time. I read my Bible on my own, like we did in my family, like family Bible studies at home. But I read through the entire Bible, just like literally starting in Genesis, going to Revelation. In like middle school I finished. I started in like elementary school. I remember I would wake up on Saturday mornings and read through the Old Testament for a few years. So yeah, I read through the entire Bible on my own, and it's very interesting with John 6. I don't know how Protestants don't see it, because I started believing in the real presence of the Eucharist in May 2017. So when I believed in it for the first time, the month before, I'd been reading through John, like all of John. So I read John 6, and I didn't see it. And it wasn't until someone sent me research of like multiple saints in the early church writing about the real presence of the Eucharist. And then, before I read John 6, it was like one night when I was redoing this research. And then I read the gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, of the Last Supper. And then I read John 6. And I started sobbing because I saw the meaning of real presence in John 6. So I don't know how, but it's like if you grow up one way of reading the Bible, that what you're taught at church completely influences the way you understand it. And so it's like, I have no clue how like a month before I read the same words, and then just because I read how the early church interpreted it, it's like for the first time, my eyes were open and I was willing to see another meaning in it. So when I was thinking of being Catholic in 2017, and I was like, for the first time open to it being true, I read through like the entire New Testament in a month, and I started seeing all these Catholic things, and it was so weird because like I'd read through the New Testament like dozens of times in my life, like studied so many passages with so much depth, and then it's like the moment that I'm open to Catholicism being true, like I see everything with new eyes. And what was really special about the process to me is that I did it on my own. Like, I didn't have a Bible study with Catholics. I didn't have Catholics explain to me the Catholic interpretation. Like, I read it on my own and I saw the meaning in it. And obviously, like, it's really helpful to do Catholic Bible study and read, like, Catholic interpretation and everything. But, like, with my plain reading of the text, when you're, like, open to it being true, you see things in a different light. And yeah, I can't even explain, but it's just like if you're taught something your whole life, then you just don't read it into it. So, and I think like as a Protestant, I didn't even know the Catholic interpretation of the Eucharist until like high school, like end of high school. And so I didn't even see that as an option. And I wonder what it would be like to have someone read the Bible on their own who did not grow up religious at all. Like, I'm really curious what they would think with like a plain reading of the text. Because it's like, even though I read the Bible on my own, I was like going to Sunday school every week and like Bible class and so many Bible studies that taught me how to read it. But yeah, it's just so amazing the experience I had where like 1 month and the next month I see the passage. Okay. Teresa, thank you so much for the donation. How has your relationship with Mary developed since becoming Catholic? Thank you for all you do. Have a good night. Oh, I hope you sleep really well tonight. So I would say that when I became Catholic, I felt very safe that, okay, don't misread what I'm about to say. Like, listen to the few sentences I say after, please. So it's not required to have to pray to Mary or have a relationship with Mary to be Catholic. So like, you don't have to pray to the saints when you get confirmed, before you get confirmed. Like, obviously it's encouraged to pray to different saints, to read their writings, to have relationships with them, all of that, but it's not required. So for like, I guess, okay, so I started researching into Catholicism in like March 2017. And that was when I started going to like Orthodox Divine Liturgy every week, and then also Mass every week and everything. So it wasn't until like a year and a half later, and I was reading a book with my fiance called The Life of the Virgin by Maximus the Let me make sure that's the right author. I get confused sometimes. Okay. The Life of the Virgin book. Yeah, Maximus the Confessor. I don't know who else I get confused with it with. Anyways, Life of the Virgin by Maximus the Confessor. And this is from the, I want to get the century right. Why is this so hard to find? It's like 5th century, 4th century. Why is this so hard? Is it debated when it was written? What is... Okay, anyways, this book was written in the early church. Okay, anyways, right in the early church, this book, I'm gonna get to your super comment real quick. So the book talks about the life of Jesus through Mary's eyes. And it was really interesting because you read the Gospels. I read the Gospels my entire life, dozens, maybe hundreds of times as a Protestant. And it wasn't until this book when I saw that the major events of Jesus' life Mary was there for. So like when she was pregnant with Jesus, when Jesus was born, when like the shepherds and wise men were visiting, during Jesus' ministry, she told him to do the first miracle of turning the water into wine, the crucifixion, the resurrection, ascension, the start of the early church. Like Mary was there for so many pivotal parts of Jesus' life. And so the book was like seeing through her eyes and explaining it. And then at the end of the book, it talked about the Catholic tradition, church tradition, Christian tradition on the end of Mary's life. And it explained how once Christianity began, like the apostles were like going out and preaching to everyone. And she was praying for everyone. Obviously, she did ministry too, but she was just like praying and praying and praying. And then it's like when she gets to heaven, she keeps praying. And so it explained to me like why we need Mary and why she is like our intercessor in heaven. You know what I mean? Like it explained in the book, it's like, oh, at the end of her life, she was constantly praying for the church. And so that continued. And Jerome he was a Christian around St. Augustine's time, St. Jerome. So he has this beautiful, it's like artwork essay written called Against Vigilantius, and it's on relics. And I have a whole video on relics, super long if you're interested in understanding it more. I'm gonna get to your super comment too, I'm really sorry. So in the essay, one of the quotes he says, now this isn't word for word, but he's like, why would St. Paul be no longer able to open his mouth and pray once he's in heaven. Like, it was just like impossible for Jerome to understand how any Christian would think like, oh, such a powerful Christian person, once they get to heaven, they're like incapable of praying for people. And so, yeah, that book helped me a lot. I guess I had to understand it like intellectually before understanding it emotionally. I don't know if that makes sense, but the first time I ever asked Mary to pray for me was actually that summer, like the summer after I was confirmed, reading that book. So it really explained it a lot. Okay, Sun Worshipper says, thank you for the donation. How are your parents' conversion coming along? So I was very confident that my friends and family would convert after me, and it's been very sad that that didn't happen. And it actually did happen to one of my friends from college who was like an older sister to me. So she converted a couple years ago after me, and that was really special just because we had a lot of shared friends in college. We were both philosophy majors, and so that was really beautiful. And I think what I forgot is that it took me knowing so many Catholics and Catholic converts until I converted. And it took like I started having Catholic friends in college like when I was 18. And then I didn't convert into Catholicism until I was 23. So it took a long time. It took like so many years, 19, 20, 21, 22, 5 years. 5 years of knowing Catholics and knowing Catholic converts until I was even willing to research in. And so because I saw so many people converting in college, that got me to a point where I was like willing to look in and wonder if it's true. And so I had to remind myself that my friends and family didn't have that experience where for 5 years they saw people converting into Catholicism who they intellectually respected. Like, my friends, they'll hear like, oh, Liz's philosophy major friends from college who were converting, like, they heard me talk about that, but they didn't know them. They didn't have a relationship with them and a friendship, and they didn't have classes with them where they heard their thoughts and perspectives on the world and saw how intelligent they were and how passionate they were about God. Like, they didn't have that relationship with them. And I think just hearing something, it isn't enough. Like, you have to have that emotional relationship with someone to really affect you a lot. And I think it's something too that I forget. I think I'm very like non-human. Like, I don't have a heart. I have like a heart of stone in like a lot of ways I think about the world. And one of them is I think that knowledge changes people. That like, if you have enough knowledge, you will convert into Catholicism, you will be a good person. Like, I just think if people know enough. And humans, like normal humans, most humans are not like that. It requires like a passion in your heart. And you can't create that in someone with just facts. And I think your heart has to be open. And I'm someone who, I've said so many times that like my emotions came after the intellectual part of my conversion, which is true. Like, I hated Catholicism. I didn't like it. And I only started liking it once I saw that it was true. But like, still, it took 5 years of seeing so many people convert until I was even willing to look at the facts. So yes, it kind of was like an intellectual thing, but really it was like a huge pride thing where it took me 5 years. And not to say other people are like completely prideful. Like, I think I was the most prideful person of everyone I know, just because I saw so many converts. Like, the moment I saw a Catholic convert, I should have been like, oh, why are you converting into Catholicism? Like, I'm the type of person who asks questions to people about their life and has really close friendships. And the fact that like my friend was going through RCIA for an entire year, and I never once was like, oh, why are you becoming Catholic over Protestant? Like, I never once asked anyone a single question about it. And so it's like, that's so problematic that I never asked. And my friends, like, they didn't even have to ask me. I mean, they have asked me. We've had conversations and like Bible studies about it and stuff. And I've explained things, but it's like, you have to have that openness of your heart. And it takes like a lot of things in your life lining up to it. And what's helped me a lot is seeing like other people who have prayed a lot for people's conversions, and like Saint Monica prayed like decades for her husband to convert, and like almost 2 decades for her son Augustine to convert. And she, like, you know, you can imagine her praying every day. And after 2 years, after 6 months, like, why is God not answering the prayer? After a year, why? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 12 years, and she keeps praying and praying and praying for her son and her husband to convert, and she didn't give up. And it's like, I believe if she didn't pray that much, Augustine may have never converted. Like, our prayers are so powerful, and we have to ask God for what we want, and then he will act powerfully in people's hearts and through the Holy Spirit and everything. And so it's like, you have to have this mentality of not giving up. And like, I'm someone who's extremely persistent, and this is something that's like really shown me that like I have to live that out in my Christianity, of being persistent and like not giving up on someone, but praying and praying with them. So yeah, that's something I expected it to be so fast, because for me, like, once I started researching into it, it was like a very fast conversion, but it took me a while to really understand that like my thinking had begun to change on Protestantism like years earlier, and I just didn't realize it. Like, I stopped believing in sola fide and sola scriptura in college, and at the time, like, it didn't click like, oh, this is a Protestant perspective, because I just didn't think Catholicism was true. And so it was like, once you give up like the biggest pillars of Protestantism, like, obviously it's easy to leave. But it's like, my friends and family didn't have this experience of like rethinking theology and like really changing into Catholic things gradually over the years. So yeah, I mean, if it took me knowing like 10 Catholics and like all these Catholic converts to be open to converting, it will probably take people I know meeting other Catholics too. And so it's like, I am like one person in the lineup to help them convert. And there's a really beautiful verse in 1 Corinthians, and St. Paul is talking, and he says, Apollos planted, I watered, God is making it grow. So just the fact that people need multiple Christians in their life, living out the faith, being passionate about their life, working hard, being kind to people, being humble, being passionate and excited about God, like, they need to see multiple people doing this to convert. And so if you guys feel like you're praying and praying and praying and nothing is happening, think of Saint Monica and how long she prayed for her son and husband to convert. And I've also heard so many stories of couples who there's one Catholic spouse and one non-Catholic, and the Catholic spouse says after like 15 years of marriage they convert. You know what I mean? Like, you can literally be best friends and living together and married to a Catholic, and it can still take over a decade to convert. And so it's like, don't give up on people, keep praying, keep just being yourself and living out the faith, and don't give up on people, because Saint Monica doesn't give up on people. And God, of course, doesn't. Okay. Okay, so the emoji that a lot of Catholics use for the Rosary is actually, I believe, Muslim prayer beads. Okay. Google account says, hi Lizzie, St. Benedict Joseph Labre might have had mental illness. I'm in his guild, the Guild of St. Benedict Joseph Labre. So there's one saint who had mental illness that's sort of acknowledged. Yes, I talked about him a lot in my YouTube video that went up on Wednesday. So it was very interesting hearing about his life. He's one of those people who it's like, he had to have had mental illness. Like, some people, it's like, oh, maybe they had that symptom, but it's like, he was rejected from so many religious orders. He wanted to be homeless, you know. Like, people without mental illness are not like, I want to live homeless for decades, you know. You have to have a mental illness to have that mentality. Okay. Greek username says, do you like the Orthodox Church? Yes, I love the Orthodox Church. When I was converting out of Protestantism in 2017, I originally wanted to be Orthodox. So I started attending Orthodox Divine Liturgy every week. I also went to Vespers every like Wednesday or Thursday night. I went to Bible study every week. So I was very involved in an Orthodox parish, and I ultimately decided to be Catholic. And it's very interesting because, like, the Orthodox Church has a lot of stereotypes where they, like, don't do evangelism and don't want people to convert in. And it's, like, super weird looking back how for, like, 7 months I was at their Bible study, I was at Divine Liturgy twice a week, and, like, the priest never once was like, hey, do you want to become Orthodox? Like, not one time. And he knew I was Protestant and everything. So it's just like, if he hadn't been so passive, maybe I would have become Orthodox instead of Catholic, you know? Because it's like, Catholics are, like, excited to talk to you and want you to convert in and stuff. And, like, I will say the Orthodox Christians online, like, who were watching my YouTube channel and everything, they were very intense about wanting me to convert and, like, sending me resources and books and, like, answering questions and all these things. But it's like the parish I was at multiple times a week, never once like, hey, do you want to be Orthodox? It's just weird to me, right? Like, I mean, I'm glad that he wasn't intense about it, because maybe I wouldn't be Catholic today, but... Hello from Greek. Hi. I really want to visit someday. Julie, are you saying you should be Orthodox? No, not at all. I believe Catholicism is true. Obviously, there could be, I could do more research, or, you know, something could come up where I was like, oh, Catholicism isn't true. So, like, I've said a lot, people have asked me, you know, like, hypothetical questions about what would happen if I wasn't Catholic. And so, obviously, like, if I left Catholicism, or, like, I found it wasn't true, then, number one, I would be Orthodox, or I would be Oriental Orthodox, or then I would become Jewish, then agnostic, atheist, you know, there's like levels of it. But I believe Catholicism is true because of the papacy. I have like a 40-minute video showing how it's original and how important that is. But obviously, I think the Orthodox Church is so beautiful. They have valid apostolic succession. So all the priests and bishops are legit to perform the sacraments. So they really do have the real presence of the Eucharist. There are churches like Anglican Episcopal who, like, think they have real presence, but they've kind of obstructed the apostolic succession. That's what it seems like. So the Orthodox Church, totally legit sacraments and everything. So that's really, really sweet. And of course, people have talked about it, the Catholic and Orthodox Church, as like the right and left lung of the church. So I think it's so beautiful. The church art is amazing. I still will attend an Orthodox church, maybe like a couple times a year if I'm traveling or something. So amazing. I have so many icons. I like icons more than crucifixes. So just like the essence of it is really, really beautiful. But I wished all Orthodox Christians would become Catholic. So, of course, they're connected to the very early church. We agree on so much, but I wish that they would just become united with the Pope. And they can still do Divine Liturgy exactly like how they've been doing it. But, and I think we can really see, like, the way the Pope has treated the Eastern Catholic churches, where, like, the priests are allowed to be married, they're allowed to follow their own calendar, like, they have a lot of freedom, and they're not forced to, like, Latinize or anything. So I think if the Orthodox Church, like, you know, individual countries and everything converted in, or, like, Pope Bartholomew, you know what I mean? So, Liz says, my godfather always comes through with the awesome icons. I love the Catholic Church, the Orthodox person says. Joshua says, I might consider Eastern Catholic in the future. Same! It totally depends on where I'm living, or where the parish is and everything. But yeah, one of the reasons is because Eastern Catholic babies and toddlers get to receive the Eucharist. And it's, like, super sad to me that, like, if I'm pregnant in the future, hopefully, during the pregnancy, my baby inside me is receiving the Eucharist, because I eat the Eucharist at Mass. So my baby's receiving the Eucharist. And then once my baby is born, he or she is not allowed to receive the Eucharist. It's like 9 months of receiving the Eucharist, and then no Eucharist for like 7 or 8 years until First Communion. So, like, I see both perspectives, I understand wanting the children to understand that it's sacred to receive the Eucharist, and maybe that was like a part of why they wanted to do First Communion, but there are so many Catholics who don't believe in the Eucharist who go through First Communion. So I'd like to see, I don't think we have this, but I would like to see statistics of before Catholicism implemented the First Communion and the rule where babies and toddlers don't continue receiving the Eucharist. So I'd like to see stats from that time of how many people believed in the real presence of the Eucharist, and then modern stats of how many Catholics don't believe in the real presence of the Eucharist. And obviously correlation does not imply causation, so it wouldn't be perfect. But I'm just really curious if doing this First Communion and children not receiving the Eucharist for a few years, if that actually has been successful catechesis and taught them about Jesus being physically present. Like, I really wonder. And also, I just wonder if someone that young, like in elementary school, is able to fully understand it. Like, I almost think if you really want people to fully understand it, maybe like 14 or 15, you know, like I feel like what is the difference between like a 6-year-old and like, you know, I don't know. It just really confuses me, and I understand the intent behind it, but I just don't know if it's working. And yeah, for a lot of Christian history, babies and toddlers were receiving the Eucharist, and it's like a really beautiful thing. So what I wanted to do, which is like going against the rules, and my fiance was like, that's not okay, is if I went to like Novus Ordo, like Western Parish, and obviously we had the rule about First Communion, but then like I wanted to attend an Eastern Rite church one day, and then I could like let my baby receive the Eucharist there, or my toddler, and that's like not allowed. Like, you're not supposed to mix the rites like that. But yeah, I think it'd just be so sad. But then if you are raising your children in like the Eastern Rite, then I guess you could like convert back to Latin Rite during First Communion. I don't know. But yeah, I think you kind of have to decide on the rite and like stick to it and like follow the rules and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It really depends on where I live and like what the parish is like and everything. So once I get married and stuff and have children, that will be an interesting time, and we'll see what my fiance and I decide. But yeah, I really love Eastern Rite churches. Okay. Google account says it used to be older, right, Lizzie? Today's saint on the new calendar is St. Pope Pius X, lowered the age to 7. Interesting. I actually have not looked into it. I can make a video. Why babies don't receive the Eucharist. So it might just confuse people though, because I think it's not a good look if you're giving like, not that my videos are shallow, but if you do like a 15-20 minute video, I feel like that's really not enough time to fully unpack it. So if I'm like, oh, the Christian church used to give the Eucharist to babies and toddlers and then changed. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a good look for Catholicism. So if it's like one video on it, I don't know. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. Confirmation occurs immediately before First Communion. In 1910, Pope Pius changed the First Communion to 7. That's so young. I mean, I don't remember what it's like to be in 2nd grade, but yeah, I don't agree with it. I think if you're gonna make them wait, do like 10 or 11, but previously it was 10 or 12 or 14. See? That would make sense. So I guess they got to decide. Huh. Yeah, it's really hard to know what to do, and I think you'd really have to have like intensive stats about like the effect of that on people's faith long term and like belief in the Eucharist and stuff, and it's really impossible to get stats like that. So, but like I said, I think it would be really interesting to see like a few hundred years ago, beliefs in the Eucharist and stuff. Okay. Joe says, I am baptized Maronite, but have gone to both Roman Catholic and Eastern churches for Sunday liturgy. Yeah, it used to be a thing where you had to be like, there's an emergency going on. So it used to be a thing where you had to be like, and maybe your Catholic churches are still like this, but you kind of had to be like registered at the parish. And then if you moved to a new city, you had to like inform your bishop and then like connect with the new bishop and stuff. And now it's not as regulated. So, you know, you could go to like multiple parishes throughout the month and like no one would notice as much as they would in the past. So like I recently heard about Catholic church registration when I was doing my marriage information with like planning the church I'm getting married at and like doing everything, all the paperwork. And I was like, what is membership? Because I was literally an RCIA, and you'd think since I was a new member of the parish, my priest would have been like, here's how to do membership, but he never brought it up. So I don't think it's a thing in a lot of churches. No one says, I remember second grade homeroom teacher Mrs. Blankard poured sulfur. LA. Wow. Yeah. I don't know if I remember my second grade teacher. My first grade teacher was like Miss Seaburger or something. I don't think it was Seaburger, but it was something like that. My third grade teacher, yeah, I honestly don't remember. I kind of remember high school, but honestly, bipolar affects memory so much. And I know it affects like remembering times when I was in depression. Like it's really hard for me to remember when I was in like a manic episode or depression episode. But I wonder if it messed up my memories from like years ago as well. I used to have a fantastic memory, so super annoying. I honestly think that's one of the worst bipolar symptoms. And I think that's very invalidating to people who are in depression episodes right now. Because obviously, like, I think depression episodes are like definitely the most traumatic. But like long term, you forget about your depression episode because there's so much memory loss in the episodes. And so, yeah, it was a horrible time for over a year. And it was probably like the hardest thing I'll ever go through in my life and the most traumatic thing I'll ever go through in my life. Like, even if like someone dies who I'm really close to, depression would be worse for sure. So that's very traumatic. But honestly, like long term, now that I'm on medication and everything and don't have to deal with depression, the memory loss is super annoying. And it's like, one example of it is I forgot how to cross the street. So you know how like when you cross a street, you look like left and right? So during my depression, I like forgot that. And so one day I was like with someone and they're like, look before you cross the street. And I was like, oh, you're supposed to look before crossing a street. Like my brain forgot that, which is so crazy that you can lose like such basic instinct skills. But that's what happens in depression. So it's super annoying, especially with like my videos and Catholicism, because I'll like research something and like have it down. And then like 6 months from then, I'll completely forget. Like, for example, not knowing what century Maximus the Confessor was in. Like, I should have that down and memorized, but like I can't because of my bipolar. And I forget a lot of beautiful memories too. And it's super annoying. Like my fiance, it really affects him a lot because like I don't remember a lot of our relationship. And you know, if I look back at photos, a lot of stuff will come back, but it's like, you know, really basic things like I forget, and my brain, yeah, the memory is horrible. So I don't know, maybe they'll be able to develop a bipolar medicine in the future that like fixes the memory issues, like it can grow part of the brain. I know I say all the time, like I'm so lucky to be living in 21st century because we have so many different bipolar meds. But I'm sure in like 500 years, people will look back and be like, I'm so glad I didn't live then. The bipolar medications were horrible. So I'm sure it will keep improving, but probably for my lifetime, I'm gonna be stuck with this. Okay, so we have about 10 more minutes left of the live stream. The 2 hours is almost coming up. So any pressing topics you want to talk about, I'll read through some of the comments. I think a lot of you are talking to each other in the comments, so I'll try to find one that I have context to. Joshua says, I'm registered with one parish, but visit other parishes and even the cathedral. Yeah, I think registering is like to be on the mailing list or something, but like, why are we sending out physical mail to an email list? Like, we have to take care of the environment. Oh, that's something else I'm becoming very passionate about. I've started doing so much research. So I want to do like a zero waste lifestyle. So that means getting rid of things that are not biodegradable or that take a long time to biodegrade. So examples are like toothbrushes, toothpaste holders, soap containers, shampoo and conditioner containers, stuff like that, paper towels, napkins, just like trying to get rid of as many things as possible. So I'll definitely be chronicling that when I figure it out. It's like one of the things I was researching was like a bamboo toothbrush, but a lot of the companies are selling them as like biodegradable, but then the bristles are made of silicone, which is not biodegradable. So it's like super lying, and this was on Amazon. So it's like I was reading through so many reviews and ingredients and stuff, and there were like 10 of them that are not fully biodegradable. So it's like I have to do so much research and spend so much time figuring this out, and so that's why I'm gonna talk about it on here, so you guys don't have to spend so much time doing the research and stuff if you want to do it too. So yeah, Lush is a really good store. I didn't even connect it, but they're like this bougie soap store. I don't know, it's not that bougie. I always viewed it that way, but I don't know. Anyway, so they have like a zero waste store where a lot of their products they sell like without wrappers and things around them. So one of the things is like if you come in and get like some lotion or product or something, you can bring the same container back and they can put it in it. And they have like shampoo and conditioner bars, so you don't have to put it in like a plastic container. And oh, something else I really want to try. I have a lot of toothpaste right now, but I want to try like you get like a little tin and it has little like toothpaste tablets that you like chew on and then the toothpaste comes out of it. So I'm gonna start doing that. Really sad because I'm very attached to my toothpaste. I've been using it for like 15 years. So it's gonna be super annoying, but we have to save the earth because our planet is becoming a disaster. So we all have to eat less meat, do less waste, really work hard to protect the earth because our corporations are super greedy, our politicians are corrupt. So I'm really not confident that we can fix it from a corporate level. I think we really have to work individually in eating less meat. Like I said, one of my future videos, maybe in September, October, why meat is the #1 cause of global warming. So if you want to reduce your carbon footprint, eat less meat. That's the most important thing, especially beef is horrible. And a huge reason why it causes global warming is that the cows fart. Like, I'm not kidding. That is contributing a lot to our global warming. It's so ridiculous. Just eat Beyond Beef. It's so good. Actually, my favorite fake meat is the Morningstar ground beef crumbles. A lot of people really like the Impossible meat ground beef because it like looks like meat and bleeds and cooks like meat and all these things. But like after being vegan for 6 years, I don't need it to look like meat. You know, like I don't eat meat anymore. So I really like the Morningstar ground beef crumbles, and you can season them. Whenever I cook fake meat, I put like garlic, salt, chili powder, turmeric, pepper, cayenne pepper. You just figure out your spice and sauce situation and you can make any meat taste wonderful. Okay. Oh, Heather says demolishing ultra fast fashion would also be better for the environment. Yes, I'm also getting into that. One of my friends was talking to me about it. Actually, the fast fashion thing is why I started researching everything else, because I was reading articles about that, and then that came across articles talking about other sustainability things. So yes, I have started using Poshmark and some other apps I downloaded. I actually haven't bought anything from it yet because I did clothes shopping fairly recently. I only buy clothes like twice a year, and I just buy like a ton of clothes. So I've also really been working on being less materialistic though, because like throughout college, I was like constantly getting new clothes, and it's like I had this thing where I didn't want to re-wear clothes in a YouTube video. And so if you think about it, it's like I was making like 2 to 3 videos a week. And so it's like, how much is that? Like 15 different shirts or dress tops every month. And I did my YouTube for like years and years and years. And in college, a lot of times I would borrow my friend's shirt so I could like wear a different shirt. But yeah, I decided like a year or a couple years ago, like I'm not going to do the like wear a different shirt in any video anymore, because it's just like, I don't need to. So, Lady says, I used to eat Morningstar, but you know, what are you talking about? Okay, let's see. Leaky gut treatment. Yeah, honestly, I say this all the time. Veganism is not a diet, because there's hundreds of different vegan diets. There's so many different vegan foods that you can put together. Honestly, unless you're in a certain stage of ulcerative colitis where you literally cannot process fiber, you just have to figure out the right ingredients going together, and veganism can work for almost everyone. Liz says, I always forget about thrifting in these conversations. The other frustrating thing about that is when you're a bigger size like me, size 13 shoe, 5'9" large frame, it's hard to find clothes. That's very interesting, because they make like less clothes, like more of the population. Honestly though, a lot of the population is 5'9". I'm 5'8", and I don't really have a problem finding clothes like that, huh? But I understand, did you say size 13 shoes? Yes, that's very big. My shoes are like 10, which is super big for women, so yeah. Maybe you could get shoes that are more fast fashion, but I feel like when people buy shoes, they use them for a long time. And so that's one of the issues with fast fashion. It's like if you're only gonna wear it for like a year and then, oh, it's not stylish anymore. Whereas I feel like people keep shoes for a long time. So I feel like you shouldn't feel bad about not thrifting shoes. Like, I literally hate shoe shopping. So of every woman I've ever met, I have like the least amount of shoes. So I don't know why, like anytime I go into a shoe store, it's horrible. So I've started buying my shoes online instead, and it's a lot better. Joshua, I have to go to big and tall. Even if I lose weight, I will need to be tall at least. Yeah, guys' sizes are way better. I was going shopping with my fiance recently, and I'd never been shopping at like a guy's store before. It was like one of the like fancy stores where they make like suits and dress shirts and ties, like that type of thing. And they specifically have like length, like arm, neck length, like for shirts. For women, it's like small, medium, large, extra large, like that's it. And it's very like the same with pants. They have like length and width, whereas for women, it's like super up in the air which size will fit us when it comes to like, and I think women, maybe in some countries they do this, but women especially, like we really have different size hips and butt. And so even if you're like a similar like hip size, that doesn't take into account thighs and butt. And so I think it would totally make sense for women's clothes to kind of branch out. Because like obviously you can go into stores and pick out jeans, and that's generally what I do. Because online, it's like I've ordered jeans online and like they don't really fit as well as they could. So, and it's so annoying too, like when you go into a store, even the same exact store, they'll have the same size and it's like a slightly different jeans. So it's like a different size that you have to do. And actually, I watched a really good, it was like an Instagram reel, and it was this woman who was showing the same size jeans at one store, and some of them like completely fit her perfectly, some were too big, some were too small, and she's like, never feel bad about yourself if the jeans don't fit you. And she's like, just like with shoes, where you fit your shoe to your foot, we should think the same thing about our bodies, where we're fitting the clothes to our body, not our body to the clothes. So I think that video was super illuminating, that you like shouldn't feel bad. Okay, Vince says, thank you for the donation. Lizzie, any advice to girl I've been talking to for a while other than good luck? Ask questions. It's really, really important to be a good listener. Women love that a lot. Get to know her, ask follow-up questions, make her feel affirmed and validated and understood. Girls also, women also like when guys are assertive. Personally, I'm assertive, and so I'm fine if the guy isn't assertive because I'll figure everything out. But I think a lot of girls like when like a guy plans a date and like reaches out and planning things. A lot of women like that. A lot of my friends do. Heather says, if thrifting an item you love, consider a tailor to modify it to fit you. That's important. Okay. Oh, last comment. I know your intention is to get off meds. What the heck? Okay, don't get off meds. Honestly, like with bipolar, a lot of people go off meds because like it's episodes. So you can go through times with no episodes. So people are like, oh, like I'm not in an episode, I don't have to be on meds. But like if you go manic, you could like do something horrible to ruin your life. Like spend thousands of dollars, go cheat on your spouse and commit adultery, sell all of your possessions. Like there's so many horrible things in mania, and so like it's not worth to risk. Like even one day in mania could ruin your life. Quit your job, so many things in mania. Anyways, I've been on here for 2 hours. Thank you everyone for hanging out with me. This has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I live stream every single Saturday night from 5 to 7 Pacific time, 8 to 10 Eastern time. New video every Wednesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video.